This is the Unstarving Musicians Podcast. The podcast features conversation for musicians of all types and genres, a curation of expertise intended to help all musicians be better at marketing, business, the creative process, and all the other things that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. Greetings, music fans, musicians, and slacker wannabes. It's Robonzo. This episode of the Unstarving Musicians Podcast features a conversation with Bill Lonero, founding member of the guitarcore band Lonero. His band's latest album, The Defiant Machine, was recently recognized by Guitar Player magazine as one of the most noteworthy albums of the last 50 years. And for those of you unfamiliar with guitarcore, it's a special brand of instrumental music that has a metal edge. Bill is also the founder of Straptight, a company that has innovated the concept of strap locks for guitar players. Our discussion traverses several topics, including, but not limited to, Bill's views on history, roots, and influences, how bread ties became the basis for a new business idea, music licensing, fan appreciation, where the music industry and many musicians get it wrong, songwriting, getting ripped off, getting 8 hours of sleep every night, the politics of music, and fun stories about Joe Satriani and Michael Burry, both of whom are among Bill's friends. We just met, as has been the case with many of my guests on this podcast, but I found our conversation particularly interesting. I think Bill has amassed a wealth of experience during what has turned out to be a challenging time to be in music and the music business. I certainly took some great notes and hope you will too. Please enjoy my conversation with Bill Lonero. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you taking time out of your week. You had some exciting news recently, which is why we got in touch. And for those listening, this evening's conversation is going to be a little educational for me. Bill and I actually lived quite close to one another in the San Jose, California area. I learned this week, and we were talking before we came on, started recording here. But I get to learn a lot about you, Bill, tonight. But again, thank you for coming up. Appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. I'll probably learn some things about myself, too, while we're going through this.
So the big news that caught my attention is the Defiant Machine was named one of the most important, noteworthy albums of the last 50 years by Guitar Player magazine. That is very cool.
Yeah, it's definitely quite the honor. It's a once-in-a-lifetime honor, and I mean, we put a lot of work into that album. I mean, it was years of getting that album together, and basically, the album started, probably 3.5 years ago, and I had written 24 songs for the next album, and I liked them. I wasn't crazy about them, but I was like, okay, with some work, they can be tweaked here and there. And then I wrote a song called Defiant, which basically, changed my whole perspective on the whole album. I was like, this is what I want the album to sound like. So I threw away all the 24 songs and I started from scratch. And then the next song I wrote was called The Machine. And I thought, well, that's a good title, The Defiant Machine. And then I started thinking, well, what would be a defiant machine? And then I thought, well, war. War is definitely the most defiant machine out there. So the whole album started kind of revolving around the idea of war throughout the last 100 years. And then it became a theme album, and it just kind of evolved. And I was really happy with the way it turned out. So, I started naming the songs based on war and conflict, and started adding in presidential speeches and Winston Churchill and things like that to kind of tie it together. And for an instrumental album, especially an instrumental metal album, it's definitely different because it's a themed album. It's just not focused on one thing, which is the main guitar player. It's focused on, history and just, telling a story without vocals.
Yeah, that's very cool. And thanks for sort of laying that out right up front, the concept and the evolution of it. So it sounds like, as you described it, it sounds like the answer is going to be no, but did you have any long-time fascination with military history, or did it all just come? You did, okay.
Yeah. I'm actually a volunteer on the USS Hornet aircraft carrier out in Alameda, which was, for people that don't know, it was the ship that recovered the first men to walk on the moon. It was also fought in World War II and Vietnam War, and it was a very important ship, wartime ship, naval ship. And so, matter of fact, all the photos for the album were shot on the ship. And in the liner notes, I have the Hornet website listed on there, because for me, it's very important to kind of educate people on the history of, our past and, what the Hornet did in terms of, American service is just incredible. Not just the war, but the way it recovered the first men to walk on the moon.
How long have you had that gig on the Hornet, and how did it come about?
I've been on there since 2004. Wow. So what happened was I went there for a 4th of July celebration, and I didn't even really know it was there. And I went there and I instantly fell in love with it. And I was like, how do I become a volunteer? What can I do to help this ship? And I asked one of the volunteers on there. I said, oh, you got to see this guy, Rick Tom. And I was like, okay. So I emailed him and ended up doing an interview with him. And I ended up doing aircraft restoration on the ship. Now my schedule kind of prevents me doing as much as I want to do, but I do whatever I can do to help bring awareness to the ship, whether it be, post on Facebook or photos on the ship or album artwork that, the cover of the album is on the Hornet, just whatever I can. We even shot a video on there. We ended up not using it, but we were there for 3 days, 8 hours a day. And it would have been an incredible video had we been able to release it. But we had some personnel issues which prevented that. So it was all for the good, though. But yeah, I absolutely love it, and I try to get as many people to go there as possible because I just think it's an amazing, amazing place.
So I mentioned to you before we started recording that I'd been, lived in the Bay Area for about 17 years, and I confess I've never been on the Hornet. So maybe when I go back, I'll check it out.
Well, and that's the thing. It's surprisingly not a lot of people have. I mean, it gets a good amount of people, but you can go there on a Tuesday afternoon and, maybe see 30 people all day long, that are tourists. And it just blows my mind because it's been used in movies with Christian Bale and it's been used in videos. Mariah Carey shot a video on there. It's got recognition, but it doesn't have that, like Google uses it, Facebook uses it, but it's not a place where people just go every day to see. And, people will go to aircraft museums and they'll see an aircraft and they can see it there and it's sitting there and they'll take pictures. But this thing is like a living, breathing museum that is active and there's historic planes on it. It's just an amazing place. And I wish more people would know about it.
So was that day in 2004, you said, was when you first went on there?
Yep.
Was that kind of the beginning of your fascination with?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was my beginning. No, that was my beginning of my fascination with the Hornet. But I've always been fascinated with, just military history, just history in general. I just think whether it's the history of music, or the history of our country or what, or the history of the world, I just think it's something that, people should know more about. I mean, as a musician, I always go back and listen to who my influences listen to and who they listen to, I've met so many young guitar players who you mention to them Jeff Beck and they look at you like a deer in headlights. Or you mention Steve Lukather and they're like, who? And it's just, to me, that's just a shame. How do you not, if you're a guitar player, you owe it to yourself to go back. And if you're fans of John Petrucci, then you need to know who John Petrucci was influenced by and you need to know who that person was influenced by. And all you're doing is helping yourself. But if you don't do that, you're shallow as a musician, if you ask me. And you just got to educate yourself on it.
Yeah, and there's so many people to learn about, so that's commendable that you've dived so deep.
Yeah, one of those.
Yeah.
I've got literally thousands of guitar magazines. From every guitar magazine you can imagine, even Japanese ones. And, I've got them in road cases and I've got them in bins and on bookshelves. And I periodically go through them and I read the old ones. I got them from 1967, Guitar Player from 1967. And I'll go there and I'll read it, about how this new guitar player named Jimmy Page is coming out or this new guitar player, Eddie Van Halen. And it's really cool because you see the nucleus of where it started and you read about it and then you can read about who influenced them. And I think it's just an amazing thing. So for people to ignore that because they want to be the fastest guitar player or whatever, and they're missing the true breadth of what being a guitar player or being a musician is about, if you ask me.
Yeah, certainly all the guys from like the 60s and early 70s who were taking blues and turning it into rock, I sort of learned from them that they went way back in music history or considerably far back to get their influences. So it's refreshing to hear that you do that because I've often wondered, we have such a huge body of rock and pop music now. There's a lot to go through.
Well, yeah, what really gets me though is that we have all the information we could ever want at our fingertips, whether it be on our laptops or our desktops or our cell phones or iPads, and yet people don't take the time to just type up who influenced Steve Vai. And all your information is right there. And they don't do that, It's just like, the majority of them will just sit there and watch a Steve Vai video and try and learn that. But where did Steve Vai get it from? That's what you got to learn it from. Where did Joe Satriani learn from? And that is where I think people are missing out as musicians, as guitar players mainly. Most other musicians do it. Piano players do it. Even bass players, I know, they do that. They go back but guitar players for some reason have this mentality of, I'm just going to go back 10 years and I'm good.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great thing that you're doing. You mentioned something a moment ago. I wanted to make a comment about your personnel in your band. We were talking about the video, and you had some personnel issues, which led me to thinking about your current lineup. So one of the guys is newer, the drummer, and Will, right? The other two, Jay and Mike, have been with you for quite some time.
Yeah, so Mike's been with me since 2004, and I love the guy. He's an incredible bass player, and everybody needs a Mike in their band. He's the guy that's solid. He's just non-confrontational, and he's a team player. If you look up team player, it's his picture in the damn book. James, JR, he's been in the band for 2 years now. I'm sorry, 3 years now. 3 years. Sorry, James. 3 years now. And he's an incredible guitar player, great guy. We always laugh. We always have a good time, and Will joined the band in September of 2015 because we had just finished our second U.S. tour, and we fired one of our guitar players, and then our drummer left, and then we got an offer to open for Marty Friedman. And so that show was like in a month. And so I was like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And we had no drummer. And I was like, we got to find a drummer. And it just so happened that one of the guys that I was renting my studio out to, he had a guitar player in his band who played drums. So he came down and he auditioned and he nailed it. And literally 2 weeks later, we were opening for Marty Friedman. And he played a flawless set.
That's amazing. Well, I gathered, and some of the stuff that you just told me, I gathered from doing a little reading, and when I was listening, going back through the current album and then a couple back, I thought maybe you had a different drummer now. Wasn't sure, but then I read some of the stuff. But anyway, Will sounds great. By the way.
He's from England, West Sussex, and I love his accent. He's just a happy guy, and he's great to have around. And as a band, we all get along, we all have a good time, and nobody fights with each other, and there's no ego trips going on, and we just all enjoy each other's company and playing with each other.
That's great. I love hearing that. Something else I picked up on doing some reading in preparation for our conversation really struck me as fascinating. So about a week ago, I had an opportunity to interview Lee Oskar of Lee Oskar Harmonicas.
Harmonicas, yeah. Okay.
And he played in War with Eric Burden. And so he had, as you can imagine, he had a lot of stories, but I want to ask you if this sounds familiar. I'm going to try to paraphrase Lee, but he had said that you can have 99% talent and 1% drive or passion, and you'll never make it. But if it's the other way around, you've got a good chance. And he talked a lot about following your heart and perseverance.
Absolutely. That could not be more true.
Well, and I bring it up because I read, this is a quote from you, and I should have pulled up my notes from my conversation with Lee, because I was actually just, on these episodes, I'll do a blog post for the episode, and so I was listening to our conversation, and anyway, here's what you said: perseverance, passion, focus, not letting anything stop you. And I think that right there is the biggest barrier, and you probably went on to say that a lot of people get discouraged.
Absolutely.
It was just amazing. So Lee's had a super illustrious career and has such a wonderful attitude today, and he said almost exactly the same thing. So anyway, you're in great company.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's the thing. People, they get passionate about something, right? And they think that it's going to be easier than it is because they've got the passion for it. And maybe sometimes it is. But for the most part, especially musicians, right? as musicians, we run across so much negativity in the industry, not just from people on the outside who say, oh, well, you shouldn't do that because there's no money in it, or you shouldn't do that because there's no future in it. But we run across negativity from inside too, from people within the industry, right? People who think that they're experts on it because they're let's say a reviewer for a magazine, or they're a booking agent, or they're a manager, but just because they're that doesn't mean that they're, the de facto end all be all authority on it. And, a lot of reviewers, they get into it because they couldn't do it as musicians. So they figure, okay, I'll just write about music. And they may not like that style of music they're writing about. So they'll give it a bad review, yet maybe there's more people that like it than that one guy that didn't like it. So they just have to not be discouraged by stuff like that. And as a musician, you have to do it because you love doing it, not because you want to get into it because of women, or you want to get into it because of money, or you want the big house, or, you want to be the subject of, Nickelback's song Rockstar, That's not what it's about. You have to do it because when you wake up in the morning, you want to be a musician, not you want to be a rock star, or you want to be a musician. And that's the difference, I mean, it's just, some people it comes faster than others. Some people, they've been playing guitar 5 years and all of a sudden they're a rock star, a legitimate rock star. And that's great. And a lot of it has to do with networking too. It's who you know. And that old saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
God, that's so true. It is absolutely so true. And that's just something that people have to just not focus on the negative part of it, because it's very easy to do that. It's so easy to get discouraged by that. You're playing guitar, you're practicing 5-10 hours a day like some people do, and they can't get something. And it's like, well, maybe you can't get it exactly like it was. Well, maybe try improvising that and come up with your own version of that. And now you start to develop your own style. And that's something that people just need to really not focus on, is the negative part of the industry.
Well, you sound like you've learned a lot, and I know you've been at this a while, but, again, Lee Oscar talked about some of these very same things, and has said you're saying almost the exact same thing, and I know you've been in it a while, but you're obviously the guy's junior, right? But so it sounds like you've learned a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I have a quote I have a couple quotes that I really live by, and one of them is, success can only be achieved when effort exceeds desire. And, what I mean by that is you have to put in the effort. You can desire something all you want, right? You can, wish that I, was a rock star, or wish that I was playing the big stages. But unless you put that effort in to make it happen, it's not going to happen. You can dream all day long, but you've got to get out of your house. You got to get out of your bedroom. There's people being famous on YouTube for playing guitar and all that stuff. But you know what? There's nothing like standing on a stage in front of people, whether it's 5 people or 500 or 5,000. There's just nothing beats that. And so you have to put the effort in, put the work into it. And whether that means 5 hours or 10 hours a day of rehearsal or practice or whatever it takes,
Yeah, I'm with you. Performing is so great. And I know in the future I'm going to be talking to people who are probably more on the recording end of things, who, while they are performing, they're not doing it in a big audience. And I'm kind of looking forward to exploring that world. But
yeah.
I'm totally with you. I've never performed at the level that you have been. I've always been, kind of a weekend warrior guy, playing gigs close to home and stuff, which is great, but like getting in front of people, nothing like it.
Absolutely.
Hey, tell me about Straptight. Did I get the name of the company right?
Yeah, that's it. So Straptight developed or started when I was at rehearsal one day, and I was playing my guitar, and I took my hands off the guitar, and all of a sudden the leading quote unquote strap lock that I was using basically disengaged from the strap post, and my guitar hit the ground and separated the fretboard from the neck. And I was like, this is wrong. This is not good, because it was my number one PB Wolfgang that I play. And I was like, this is not good. So after the tears went away, because I was completely upset about it. I mean, I really was. I was like on the border of like a breakdown, because I'd had that guitar for, close to 15 years, and I've used it on every album, and I've used it at every show I've ever played with this band. And it really meant a lot to me. The guitar is repaired, by the way, and it's back in working order. So, but I went home and I thought, there's got to be a better, easier way to make a strap lock. You don't need screwdrivers. You don't need to replace your post. You don't need pliers and wrenches and all this stuff. All you need is something to clip on over the strap, and you're done. So I called up a friend of mine who owns a company called Hot Picks, which makes guitar picks. And the funniest thing was, I remember when I was a kid, I used to use a bread tie, because, I didn't have any money, and you just clip a bread tie. It was a quick fix. So I told him, I said, hey, go get a bread tie. And he's like, why? And I said, just go do it. And he goes, well, you're not going to believe this. He goes, I got like 400 of them sitting on my kitchen counter right now. He goes, and I don't know why. He goes, I've been collecting them for the last 2 years. And I just put them in a jar and I never knew why. He goes, but I've just been saving them. I said, okay, well, now go get one. So he got it. And I said, now grab a guitar to strap. And the first thing he says was, you got to be kidding me. And I said, no, he knew exactly where I was going with it. So he put it on there and he's like, holy shit. He goes, this could work. And I said, yeah. So he ended up coming over the next night. We drew out a design. I gave it to my brother, who is a machinist. And my brother kind of made a little prototype for us. And then what I did is I texted Joe Satriani and I said, I know you don't use strapped locks, because he hasn't for years. And I said, but I got something I think you may be interested in. And he says, okay. He says, come by my house and show me what you got. And I was like, all right. So I went there the next day and he had 3 guitars laid out on the table. And he said, if you could put strap lock on these guitars, I'll be impressed. And I said, okay. So I grabbed his guitars and I popped it on each one. And he just slapped his forehead and said, this is the dumbest, most brilliant idea I've ever seen. Why didn't I come up with this? And he goes, do you need an endorser? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. So he became our first endorser and our kind of champion for it. And he's been great. I mean, he helps out a lot in terms of helping us promote it. And now redesigned it. We have a version 2, which is round. But it took us a year to develop the material for it and get it to where we wanted. It wasn't just a piece of plastic to put on. I mean, it's a combination of like 4 different materials. And it's all 100% made in the USA. And it's, $7.99 for a pack of 4. And it works. I mean, that's all I can say is it works.
That's very cool. I had to, when you said bread tie, I was thinking the little twisty things, but then, so I Googled it, and then I remember I saw this your Straptight
plastic
device. Yeah, yeah. Well, I saw a picture of both, but I'm like, okay, I get it. He got the little, the plastic one.
Yeah. The plastic, yeah. But, like I said, it took, wasn't just a matter of taking that on there. And we've had people go, oh, well, that's just like a bread tie. And we tell them, okay, I'll tell you what, you grab a bread tie and you put it on your most expensive guitar you've got and now swing it around your head. And then when that thing falls off, you tell me it's like a bread tie. And that shuts them up real quick. I mean, they're like, nope, I don't want to do that. It's like, yeah, because it's not like a bread tie. It's completely different. But, the shape, I can understand that. The first design was that shape and kind of. And, but since, like I said, we've redesigned it now and I think it's beautiful in its simplicity.
Yeah. Do you see yourself or the company going into other products in the future? Are you just going to stick with this one or?
Well, I'm actually working on something with my brother for drums, and cool. It's something to keep the lugs from turning and going out of tune, and it works really well as well. So I'm working on the patent for that right now, and that's another avenue of adventure for me.
Had you done anything like this before, like a business, that music related or not, prior to Straptight?
No, I'm the type of guy that's always like every time I look at something, I think, well, is there a better way to design that? Like, I'm still trying to come up with a better way to design the wheel. I haven't done that yet. It's really hard, but one of these days I'm hoping. But yeah, I've always been that guy that kind of like looks at stuff and just thinks, I wonder if there's a better, more efficient way to kind of come up with that. And, in this instance, I was right. There is. But I do like exploring stuff like that and seeing, it's quite interesting. It's quite fun, I think. And it's just a cool way to create.
Yeah. So obviously Lee Oskar that we were talking about has had this second source of livelihood and still plays music. But but aside of him, you're the first person I've talked to, at least that I know of, and maybe I talked to someone already, I've interviewed someone and just didn't realize it, but you're the first person I've talked to who has like a product line or a side business inspired by the music. I think it's interesting because the way the music industry is today, it just makes a lot of sense to do things like this or other things to produce income while you're working at your art. Has it been, do you see it being something sort of big for you to be part of your long-term strategy?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's, music is always going to be my first and foremost, passion. And that's what everything I do, whether it's Straptight or the photography thing, is a way for me to kind of work, I don't want to say to support the music, but just kind of to push in that direction. For instance, so I got into photography. I've always been a lover of photography. I just think photography is a really cool thing. You can capture something in that moment and envision it and see it and wonder what happened right after that photo was taken or what before that photo was taken. So I got into photography about a year ago and, really got into it, and I started doing landscape photography. And so I started a website of my own called PhotoNext, FOTONEXT.net. And it's all my landscape stuff. And, you can kind of see the progression of my photography, I guess you could say. But about 3 weeks ago or a month ago, I got invited to Satriani's G4 camp, which is his guitar camp that he does every year, which is fantastic. And I said, well, if I go, I don't want to just go and just hang out and just be a flower on the wall or a fly on the wall. I want to actually work. If I can help out, I'd love to do it. So, he said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I don't know. I said, I can do something. He said, well, let me have my manager call you. So his manager called me up. He says, yeah, what do you want to do? And, what do you want to do to help out? I said, well, I got a camera. I can do that. He said, okay, bring your camera. So it was in Pacific Grove. So I went out there for a few days and started taking photos and everything like that. And the owner of the camp, the owner of Dreamcatcher Events, which is the one who puts on these camps, said, hey, can you take photos of this? Can you do our group shots? And can you do our individuals of all the campers with all the, so there's like 200 shots of all that. And I was like, yeah, no problem. So I just jumped into it. I didn't even think about crap, I've never done this before. I've never done portrait photography like this. So I just jumped into it and I did it, and they liked the photos, and they said, hey, would you come to John Petrucci's camp in New York in a week and a half? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I went out there. I just got back on, when did I get back? I got back on Saturday of last week, and I was there for a whole 6 days and, in Glen Cove, Long Island, and shot the John Petrucci camp and did all that. And it was just the way I look at it, another avenue in music. It's photography, but it's doing music photography. And, it was just really fun for me. And I had a great time, hanging with everybody. And I've known some of the guys who were there for years, and like Mike Mangini and Tony McAlpine, I've known them for years, so it was cool to reconnect with them and kind of get back on that path.
Oh, that's very cool. I actually saw some photos of you doing photo shoots at the G4 camp. So at the
G4. Yeah. You saw the people. Yeah, there was one where I was shooting Tommy Emmanuel's camp there, and then one shooting Joe's camp, and it was just a lot of fun. I mean, I had a blast. And so if they got more and they want me to do it, I'll do it for sure.
Well, it sounds like it. They're going to ask you again.
Yeah. I mean, if they do, yeah. I mean, I know the next one they got is Steve Vai in Palm Springs, so I'd be, definitely do that.
Shoot, yeah, that'd be great.
I love Palm Springs, so that's like my favorite place to vacation.
It's a pretty cool area. I've only been once, my wife and I, but it was pretty cool. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were just has been going there, maybe lived there when she was younger, and just talking about how much it's changed. But it's a nice place.
Yeah. I mean, I love it because of the history of Sinatra and Elvis Presley, Dean Martin, all those guys. And I love that. I love the Rat Pack. I love Elvis. And, so for me to go there and you get to see their homes and just to walk the streets that they walk. And again, it goes back to the history, right? It may not be necessarily be guitar history, but it's music history. And, Elvis influenced so many of these musicians that I listen to today. And it's just, without him, we would not have Led Zeppelin, and we wouldn't have Black Sabbath and AC/DC and all these guys and Van Halen. Elvis shaped music culture, and, a lot of kids today don't realize that. They think of Elvis as some old guy, but he definitely wasn't.
Yeah, so true. What are you listening to these days?
Elvis and Sinatra and Dean Martin. that is, seriously, like I listen to that. I listen to Waylon Jennings, and I don't listen to much metal, honestly, because it really just bores the hell out of me for the most part. It's become quite predictable, and instrumental music just kind of, I don't know, it's become a speed race. And I'm just not a fan of that. I'd rather hear somebody just hold a note for 20 seconds than hear somebody blaze off, 64th note arpeggios and just to show off, It just does nothing for me. And I would just rather hear Dean Martin's, or Elvis or something like that. It speaks more to me.
Yeah, I was doing some drum exercise practice on dynamics the other day, and I just put on my Google Play Music subscriber, and no Buddy Rich. I put it on a random selection of something that was recommended, and some Elvis came on. I think it was a Beatles channel actually, but some Elvis came on, and those songs were just always so much fun to listen to. Certainly,
yeah, they really are. When you think about there was an airness about Elvis Presley, this charisma that nobody can touch, and I know people that say, oh well, he never even wrote his own songs. And it's like, you know what, he didn't have to. He had so many people coming at him with songs. The guy could just speak the alphabet and it sounded musical. I mean, it's just it's a rare talent. There will never ever be another man. another musician or performer like him.
You know, you reminded me that the same could be said, and maybe even worse, of Joe Cocker, but that guy was amazing.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, without a doubt. No. I mean, what a voice that guy had, and the dynamic stage presence he had.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, I think that other musicians who listen to the podcast would like hearing about your experience, but I read that Relentless, your album Relentless, featured a song called Loose that's been licensed by Discovery Channel and MTV Awards.
Yeah, MTV.
Some other stuff.
Yeah, VH1.
Yeah. How did that come about? Did you have direct involvement in that? Did you learn some things from that? Are you still doing that kind of thing, licensing?
Yeah. I mean, I went through a company called, if I can remember the name, oh crap, what were they? Now I'm drawing a blank on Pump Audio. So Pump Audio, they're licensed through Getty Images. So here's the thing. I've talked to a lot of musicians, right? And who had, their music license stuff. And I would ask them, hey, how did you get your music? Oh, well, I can't tell you that, because if I tell you that, then, it's going to lessen my chances of my music.
Oh, for God's sake.
I think that's such bullshit. I really do. I think that's such bullshit, and it drives me up the wall. And so I'm like, you know what? If I have some information that could help you out, I'm more than happy to do it. So Pump Audio was the company that I went through, and they got Loose and a few other songs. But Loose was the one, for some reason, that people seemed to like, the best for stuff like that. So like Discovery Channel, VH1, that metal show twice, MTV Video Music Awards, BBC, what's that song? Something Planet on, I think it's Discovery Channel as well, but I forget the name of it.
Animal Planet. Some kind of, just kidding.
No, not Animal Planet, but the other one about all the different. It's like Animal Planet, but it's about the different life on planet Earth, and it talks about they have a show about icebergs, but I don't remember the name of it. But yeah, it got used on this. What is it?
This Lonely Planet? Is that
no, not that one. But I wish I could remember the name of it. But it did get used on that as well. And, so every once in a while I get a royalty check for some TV show it was used on or something. And it's really cool, because you don't know when it's going to happen, because it's like 6 months after the fact, So I have to Google it or YouTube it if I want to actually see it.
So at that time, were you actively looking to license music, or was it just happenstance that it came about? Or
well, yeah, I was definitely out there. I was pushing the music out there to licensing companies, and and I still do that. And it helps, because the thing about that is you don't know when it's going to happen, right? I mean, unless you get unless you get approached by, let's say, a licensing company to use the music, which probably doesn't happen that often. There are licensing companies out there that you can approach and upload your music to, and then it'll, if it gets picked up, it gets picked up, But like with Pump Audio, you have to really focus in on keywords. It's very big on keywords, because what happens is when they have this little box, and I'm pretty sure they still do this. They have a little box that they send out to the movie companies, TV networks, whatever. When they're looking for music, they basically search the database, and they'll type in a word like, let's say, lonesome. All the songs that have been tagged the word lonesome will pop up, and then they'll redefine that and maybe say, sad. So all the songs with the word lonesome and sad will now pop up. So you start narrowing down that list. So you have to really make sure you get your keywords correct.
It is like Getty Images.
Yes.
I had no idea.
In fact, Getty Images bought Pump Audio.
Mm-hmm. It makes sense. It's a similar sounding.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, man, there must be so much stuff out there too. So, but that's cool. I mean, if you're just putting your stuff out there and paying attention to it, and does it matter that you literally telling people, that are relevant, that you're doing this? Like, in other words, not just putting it on Pump Audio, but talking about it openly. Does that kind of thing help? Or is it really just like, this is one of the better ways you can do it. Just put it out there and know that it's keyword driven, and that's that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, the problem with the music community is it's very guarded, right? Nobody wants to help each other. Everybody wants to, take the whole pie for themselves. And I'm not like that. I want, if I could help somebody else, succeed, if I can give them some information that would help them, then fine. I'm secure enough in my music that I'm not worried about the guy next door. I'm not worried about the band down the street, I've built this band up. We built this band up as a band, and we're confident in what we can do. It's a niche market. It's instrumental, but we don't call it instrumental rock. We don't call it instrumental metal. We call it guitarcore. And the reason we call it guitarcore is because when I write a song, I write it with the rhythms first, the drums, the drums and all, and the rhythm and all that together. And I write with verses and choruses in mind. The melodies and the solos are the last thing that I put on. The solo is the very last thing I put on. To me, that's not as important as the melody. Because when I listen to a song, to me, and this is something I remember reading in a Bon Jovi interview, and this is probably why Bon Jovi is so damn successful, is he said, if you have a song and you strip away everything off that song and you're just left with an acoustic guitar, and that's the only thing you're playing, you should still have a song. Your song should not be dependent upon whether or not the melody is good or whether or not the solo is good or whether or not, you have this great drum solo in it. You should still have a song based on one instrument left. And so when I write a song, for me, it's about the rhythm. If you take away the melody and the solos, you should still have a song there. And I want people to be able to sing. And in fact, we've had people send us lyrics. I listened to your song and I wrote these lyrics. They inspired me to write these lyrics. And I just thought I'd send them to you. And I just think that's the coolest thing in the world because that's what I set out to do. And that to me is what guitarcore is about. It's about that, that overall sound being rhythm driven, not guitar solo driven.
Tell me that there are some singers out there on YouTube that are sending you videos saying, dude, I've got the lyrics for your song.
In fact, we had one guy in particular send us a video of him singing over our song Loose. And it was, I'll be, diplomatic here. It wasn't the best, but the effort was there and it was really cool that he did that. And I thought that was awesome, We even had a band rip us off. I mean, to where for that song, in fact, for Loose, they stole the rhythm. They stole the intro. The only thing they didn't steal was the melody. And it was a death metal song, and I was like, they took our song and they made it a death metal song. And they didn't send that to us. We found it. Somebody sent it to us. And I was like, this is our song. But I didn't pursue a lawsuit or go, oh, you guys got to stop. Because they're a local band. I forget where they were from. But they obviously heard our song Loose. And I mean, they ripped us off, plain and simple. And if I did bring any attention to them, all it would do was help them. And in my opinion, I'm not out to help somebody who's going to rip somebody else off blatantly.
Sure. There's so many in today's internet world. There's so much of that happens.
Yes.
And in some ways, it's a nice compliment, and in some ways, it's just a damn shame.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, in a way, it is a compliment, and I think it's definitely flattering, but it's also insulting as well. But it is what it is. I mean, that's just the music industry. You can either sit and mope about it and spend all your energy trying to fight it, or you can just say, hey, that's cool. They were influenced by this song. They took it. They put a different spin on it. They made it into a death metal song. Okay, great. Move on. Next.
Yeah, if they gave you credit.
Yeah. But which they didn't. But, oh well. That was 4 years ago. So I'm not going to, not even going to worry about it.
Yeah. Bill, are you actively or aggressively or significantly involved in the marketing and business end of the band, or do you have a team doing that for you?
Or? 100% me. Yeah, 100% me. I mean, it's all the social networking, all the website design, the CD artwork design. I do everything.
You must not sleep much.
Believe it or not, I get 8 hours of sleep every night. Every single night, I get 8 hours of sleep.
Good for you.
It's just time management, basically. And I mean, I hear people, there's 24 hours in a day, but I don't have enough. Well, that's bullshit. You have enough. You have plenty of time and you could still get enough sleep. You just have to pick your battles and okay, today I'm going to work on this and maybe later on tonight I'll work on this. It's not about, I've got to do everything right the same, because if it's really, really important, you can get it done. If it's not that important, it can wait.
Yeah. I suppose this is something that's come into focus for me in more recent years. And funny thing, I'm reading a book I was a little reluctant to read, but now that I'm reading it, I would highly recommend it to anyone. It's called The One Thing by the guy who's a founder or co-founder of Keller Williams Realty, of all things. But it's I've heard the title over and over and over from like brand marketer people. Anyway, reading through it and really does speak to what you were just discussing about I mean, you didn't say the words, but I knew where you're going, prioritizing, picking your battles. You did say that, and blocking off appropriate amounts of time for the things that matter to you most and not trying to do too much all at once. But anyway.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, one thing is not to lose, and I see people do this, they lose focus and they lose connections with people that are important to them because they're so focused on something else. But with the internet and texting, you can still keep in contact with people that that are close to you while you don't have to shut the people out of your life just because you're focused on working or doing whatever. And I see that happen a lot, and I just think it's unnecessary. You don't need to do that. I'm on Facebook. I communicate. If somebody emails me, I'll email them back as fast as I possibly can. Because to me, it's the least I can do is show respect to that person. If they have the time to email me, whether it's a fan or it's a friend or whatever, if they have time to email me, then I could take the time to email them back because they took the time out of their day to email me. So to me, fan-musician relationship is very important. And I see a lot of bands that don't do that. They don't nurture that. And, you've got to. I mean, without fans, you're nothing. You're just in your garage playing music for yourself. And you have to treat fans with respect. And, however you're going to do that, whether it's just a simple reply to them or a like on their Facebook page, whatever it takes, but just show respect to them because they bought your album, they downloaded your music, they buy your posters, they come to your shows, they wear your t-shirts. And after a show, go out and talk to them. Sign a couple autographs, say hi, say thank you for coming, I mean, to me, that's just what needs to be done. But I see a lot of people that just don't do that, and I think it's disrespectful.
Yeah, I'm constantly reminded how important that is. And just over the years, I've seen so many people do it so well, some of whom I've actually had the opportunity to play with. And some people are great at it. So I'm always learning from others in that area. And it's nice to hear you talk about it. So it looks like you're doing a great job, by the way, on the whole marketing thing on social, and clearly you're doing some good things in business as well. Have you've been at this a little while, so maybe you do have something that you wish you'd have known, 10 years ago, or are there mistakes that you learned, any particular mistake that sticks out that you really learned from that might be valuable for others?
Don't trust people. I mean, I say that kind of tongue in cheek because I trust everybody. Even after they burn me, I still give them the benefit of the doubt, and maybe that's the Virgo in me. I don't know. But, for a while there, I was like, you know what, screw this person. I'm not going to trust them ever again. But, you don't know. Maybe they just had a bad day that day. Maybe they were getting a divorce from their wife. You don't know what the situation is behind their behavior. So I always feel like, I want to give that person a second chance. Maybe this is different. Maybe they've learned from their mistakes, like I have. That's something I think that's important, as a musician, because, we have to support each other. There's too many people out there that are looking to take advantage of musicians. And it goes from websites that promise, if you pay us $25, we're going to get your music listened to by a top leading producer. But, it's usually a scam. Who's the top leading producer? Who's he produced? They don't tell you any of that stuff. So you have to watch each other's back. You can't live in a little island and be like, okay, this is about my music career and nobody else's, because if you help out the other person, you don't know who they're going to become, right? I mean, they could become the next Eddie Van Halen, and maybe they'll remember what you did for them, and maybe they'll throw you a bone and be like, hey, you want to open up for us? You don't know what's going to happen. So you have to keep that in mind and just realize that it's just not all about you. It's about the music community as a whole. And it doesn't matter what kind of genre the music community, it doesn't have to be metal. If you're a jazz guy, help out the rock guys, and vice versa. Stop being snobs. That's one thing that I get from, a lot of musicians, and they're snobs. And it's like, you don't need to be like that.
Yeah, I'm gather from talking to different people that there's, I guess, like politics in the industry and in different parts of the industry that, and going back to Lee Oscar, he had just given the advice of don't take it personal. You don't know where people are coming from, and they get caught up in their allegiances and whatnot. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, a lot of the politics are politics driven by agents and managers and labels and record labels, and it's not the musicians themselves, a lot of times. It's the people behind the scenes, the lawyers and all this stuff. And it's just like, if you take them out, then you've got these guys who are willing to work with each other, these great musicians who are willing to work with each other. But with all these other people involved, they can't. And we're denied a lot of great music because of that.
Sure.
A lot of great conglomerations, I guess. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's just a lot of good partnerships that could be had, but they're not.
Yeah. You and I, or I should say, I encountered a post by you about the accolades for the Defiant Machine, and it was through a Facebook group that I believe we're both in, and it was either the Schwilly Family Circus or the launch, the Music Launch Hub. Do either of those sound familiar?
No, I don't know those.
Oh, wow. So, Facebook's so funny. Maybe I just thought that. But I wanted to bring them up because there are a number of Facebook communities that are, kind of working to help musicians.
That's great.
Take advantage of all the changes that are going on and kind of help keep them from missing all the changes that are happening that they could leverage to build a fan base and have an opportunity to make it and get away from or not to focus too much on the traditional model, which is struggling.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, we have the internet at our fingertips. It takes one click of a button to share, content to the rest of your followers. And, Facebook has just become this powerhouse. And it's just, as a band, Facebook is still pretty powerful. I mean, they do some shady things with their ads and all that stuff. But whether, if it's peer to peer and how we share other people's content, I mean, I think that's the most powerful thing. And, people they need to take advantage of it. And, our fans are pretty awesome, I got to say. I mean, they do share our content and they post about us and all that stuff. And they tell other people about us and I absolutely love them for it, because like I said, without fans, you're just a band in your garage, or your studio, your warehouse, wherever you rehearse.
Yeah. Well, I'm not surprised to hear that you guys have all the support. You're doing a lot of stuff online. You're putting out really high quality product. You obviously care about your fans, and I'm sure it permeates throughout the band. So I'm sure you're well deserving of it.
Thank you. I mean,
yeah, you guys are doing fantastic work. So for those of you listening, you need to check out the latest album by Lonero. Please tell me I just said it right.
Yeah, you got it right. Yeah,
Defiant.
Absolutely.
It's a great recording. I just started checking it out myself because of my new acquaintance here with Bill. Yeah. It's really good stuff. Bill, you're not hard to find online, but if people were to find out what you guys are up to, where's the first place they should go?
Lonero.net, Lonero.net, or Facebook.com/Lonero Music. Those are the two best places.
Okay, and you guys are all over social, I see. So
yeah,
you got a lot of good content out there for people, and it looks like you're on all the digital services. I'm sure it would be awesome for anyone who's really into it to buy a hard copy of the CD if you're into collecting. So
yeah, and and see, that's the thing. I mean, I do prefer the hard copy of the CD. I mean, because call me old school, but a lot of effort goes into the artwork, and like I said, the album is a theme album, so you've got songs that kind of they go in order. The order of this album is from World War I to Desert Storm. So if you just buy one song randomly in the middle, you're not getting the full effect of what this album is about, And for me, the song titles are very, very important to this album. And I don't know how much time we have. Do you have a few minutes? I mean,
go for it.
Okay, so I mean, the song titles are just they're very important to this album. They all tell a story in and of themselves. Like 13 Days tells the story of the Cuban Missile Crisis, but there was one song in particular that it was originally called Perception, and I had written this song, but I could not come up with a title for it. And in the order of the album, it was in the World War I era. So I had sent the song, the whole album, before it was done, to my friend Michael Burry. Michael is the subject of the book The Big Short and also the movie The Big Short, and Christian Bale portrays him in the movie. Mm-hmm. So I had sent this album to him, and he said, I love the album. He says, but I don't understand what Perception has to do with World War I. I said, well, it has nothing to do with it. I just can't come up with a title for it. So the next day I get an email from him. He says, well, I got this spreadsheet here, and I've been working on this for 2 years, and it's song titles that have just popped in my head over the last 2 years. And for some reason I wrote them down, and I thought maybe one of these would come in handy for you. Maybe you can use one of these titles. So I said, well, that's awesome. I'll look through it. So I started scanning through it, and there was a song called Tuesdays for Killing. And I thought, my God, if that's not metal, I don't know what is, right? It's just a great freaking title. But it had to it had to mean something. It couldn't be just a title. It had to actually have significance. So I did a Google search to find out what significant battles in World War I started on a Tuesday. And it turns out that World War I actually started on a Tuesday. So it just couldn't be more perfect. So I named the song Tuesdays for Killing, and it was just absolutely perfect. And it was one of those serendipitous moments when you're like, that was meant to be. You know, it was because it was just going to be called Perception, and it would have been one song out of that album that just made no sense. You know, I mean, I'm sure I could have spun it somewhere and been like, the perception of World War I, but that would have been weak, you know. But yeah, and then, you know, Burning of Ideals is about, you know, the Pearl Harbor and America getting into World War II and how basically we came of age as a country, and the ideals of, because Japan had said that they were our friend, and they basically bombed us. And so that was a kind of a burning of ideal of that burning of that friendship. And, so the whole album has that. And then of course the end of the album is called The End. The last song is called The End. And that was just a kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it does apply to Desert Storm because George Bush said, we are victorious. And that's what happened there. So, like I said, when you just download one song off the album, off of iTunes or Pandora, you don't really get the full meaning of what this album is about. And like I said, it's a theme album. And I just think it's just better when you have the whole packaging in your hand and you can read the liner notes and you can see all the photos. And it tells a story.
Well, I have a feeling that people that give it a listen are going to be inclined to pick up the whole thing. It just it strikes me uniquely as one of those kind of albums. So good for you, and great.
Thank you.
Great story with Michael and the song title.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that it's just like, you know, it's I've known him for years now, and it was really one of those moments that I think is kind of like meant to be. And I'm a strong believer in, you know, things meant to be, that you're where you are right now at this moment because that's where you're meant to be. And I'm just a big fan of that.
Well, that's so cool. Well, Bill, thank you again so much for taking time out of your day to speak.
My pleasure.
There's clearly a lot of other stuff we could have hit on, so we may have to do it again sometime in the future.
Tell me when.
Yeah, wish you guys all the best.
Thank you.
Album and any touring you do. And man, you're definitely welcome back. So hope to talk to you.
Thank you. For sure. Me too. For sure.
All right, man. Take care.
All right. You too.
Hey, this is Robonzo. Thanks so much for listening. Did you know I'm also an author? Check out my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. How to Get Booked and Paid What You're Worth Over and Over Again, available on Amazon. And the book is also available in audio format as the Unstarving Musician's Guide podcast. Check it out wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Last but not least, are you a gigging musician, recording artist, songwriter, or touring professional? Perhaps struggling to get your music out to the world? Struggling to get the gigs you want? Pop over to unstarvingmusician.com and sign up for my email list. I'll send you an occasional email with tips, expert advice, music, musician resources, and anything else I come across that might make your journey better and brighter. With much gratitude, peace, love, and more cowbell.